poetry. Welcome back to poetry. And thank you again for being here. The next part of our all-day program involves hearing from 5 poets, 5 Connecticut poets who are also in Waking Up to the Earth. I'm not going to introduce them myself. They're going to introduce each other, but I just want to say their names right now. Marilyn, Ben, Dan, Frederick-Douglass, and down here David left. The table wasn't big enough. But there is always room for another poet at the table. So don't be surprised when David hops up from the floor to the podium when it's his turn to read. Also in this lineup, we were supposed to have Rennie McQuilkin, who once was Poet Laureate preceded me as Poet Laureate of Connecticut. Rennie couldn't be here today. And I want to read a poem of his that was in the anthology called Dung Beetle. A little bit because I'm identifying it right now, the little beetle, like Sisyphus that pushes this thing down and stuff. Is everybody's energy up? Long day. So Rennie's poem is called Praise Song. There's a note about the dung beetle. The nocturnal African dung beetle is the only known non-vertebrate to navigate and orient itself by the Milky Way. How does it do that? Now let us praise dung beetles, who roll balls of excrement towering over them. Faced with such an ordeal, Sisyphus might have called it quits. But these leggy, body-armored fellows sculpt, roll, and stash away fecal stuff 250 times their own weighty nightly for progeny born in the bosom of dung. See them clamber to the top of their globes and orient themselves by the stars, dead reckoning like ancient Polynesians at home in their wilderness of ocean. I will tell Rennie that you applauded quietly. Our first reader now is Benjamin S. Grossberg, who forgot to send me his bio, and I didn't have the time to look up much, so I've got 2 sentences for Ben, and he wouldn't give me any more information out of complete humility.
I thought I was going to this one.
See what I mean about poems? He said, I thought I was supposed to introduce things, so I did an introduction. This has been happening all day. We watched this beautiful film on trees, ancient old trees, and the first poet up today, what did she read? A poem about an ancient old tree. I mean, the synchronicity and interrelationship has been really remarkable. All right, enough. Benjamin S. Grossberg is Director of Creative Writing at the University of Hartford. His book, My Husband Would, which is wonderful, investigates love and family and won the 2021 Connecticut Book Award. He is also the author of Space Traveler, Sweet Core Orchard, winner of the Tampa Review Prize and a Lambda Literary Award, and Underwater Links in a Single Breath, that book, is the winner of the Snyder Prize. He has also published 2 chapbooks, The Auctioneer Bangs His Gavel and An Elegy. I give you Ben.
Not to applaud after every poem, that's better just to
Just say
just say or snap, or you can put your head woefully in your hands. I'm going to read some poems about apple trees, which are my first love. I was telling a friend of mine when she asked me, "Why do you write about apple trees? Why do they interest you so much?" And I don't have an answer. And my explanation was that those things that call to us beyond reason, that's most meaningful. And her response was past life. So I just throw that out there. The first poem I'm gonna read is sort of a treat for me to read this poem, but it's sort of a tough poem to do at a reading because it is built on an unarticulated comparison. So I'm just going to tell you what that comparison is with the hopes that you can follow the poem more fully. The poem compares, you know how sometimes in a book of art you'll see a painting and then on the next page you'll have a detail of that painting, like a close-up? Yeah? So the poem is comparing that to what we can see of our world and what we can imagine as paradise. And the poem is called Detail from an Illustration of Paradise. The plate that held the full picture has been ripped from the binding. Crack the spine, lay the pages flat, you'll see the jagged edge. But on the next page, there's a detail, a branch curving up at a perfect angle, just what an orchardist aims for, using braces to create that grace. A branch open wide like a dancer, arms rising over his head, halfway to fourth position. And on the branch, McQuilkins, nearly McQuilkins, green fading to roseate, unblemished, a cluster of 3 interspersed among the leaves, and farther up, 1 of 4. From behind them, rays of setting sun. Is this a branch of good and evil, of life, or just one of the other apple trees in paradise? In a musty room, the bearded figures of my ancestors bend over scripture, from Arkansas Black to Granny Smith, all the delicious, all the crisps. Which of them? There must be Talmudic language hinted, hung on the tree of life, which on the tree of sin. But you can't tell from the detail what other varieties the master daubed in glossy oils, what dotting of pigment you could take a magnifying glass to see the dab of white where she created a reflected gleaming in all those apples that haven't yet been bred yet by some orchardist in New Zealand or Brazil or Michigan, purple tinted sour sweet, red to gold leaf, a wine more wine than wine sap, more honey than honey crisp. All the good things we don't yet have names for. So many apples hinted in the far distance of her canvas, it's like planets hinted in the night sky. But the McQuilkins are here, tempting you to reach into the detail, extending your fingertip to the farthest, then slowly drawing your hand back over leaf, branch, and curved skin. It isn't a lot from which to imagine the page torn out. It may be enough. We're going to eat. The orchardist's complaint. The orchardist's complaint. This is sort of a dramatic monologue, but just a little bit. So it's a little bit of a poem in character. The orchardist's complaint. Take the wind. Take a few weeks of rain. Take a vacation up north into permafrost, and let the whiteness of landscape become a blankness of mind. Drive out to where the road is a black bisecting line. Take care, the easiest salutation, though what it means isn't quite clear, of yourself, or is it a more general admonition with the insinuation that any noun could follow? But that's just what's so exhausting. Take rabbits, Their score, the pyramids of brown beads, inoffensive until you observe the damage. Their teeth gnawing into a trunk and sap glistening out. Liquid amber. That gnawing can kill a tree. Girdling, the bark stripped all the way around. Takes just a few minutes. Take a bow and arrow to the damned rabbits. It is exhausting to love anything, especially things outside your 24/7 vigilance, like trees and, God forbid, people. Take my mother, as if the object of her body could have been maintained forever in hospital. She said, I feel safe here, when I asked, don't you want to go home, Ma? If you take the long view, nothing's safe. What's the time frame we're concerned with here? 20 years? 30? We can only game ramifications out so far before events overtake us. And that may be the best reason of all to love the evanescent, an animal whose lifespan you can cradle in the crook of an elbow, whose old age comes at you like a vehicle. Take insects, take fungi. Uncontrolled, either can kill a tree, a season by season weakening. So take the trees inside, explode the living room into an atrium, open the ceiling to glass, an orchard to sit in for evening television. Take the neighbors fretting with a grain of salt. They're just jealous. The freedom of caring for nothing isn't to be underestimated. The problem, it's a freedom with no particularly soulful application. You can go anywhere you like, but finally, who cares where? Failing that, only two outcomes remain. You die first, or it does, whatever it is you happen to love. Take a minute to think about that, as if it could stop you from loving. This poem is more directly about a tree. This is called Gala Tree. Gala apples you see at the supermarket all the time. Gala Tree. This poem is one sentence, so bear with me. Gala Tree, the long sentence. See how, stimulated from the rhythm, the branch's last extant leaf pushes back as the bud beneath it swells, like in early spring they all do, except there's no heavy brown husk to break from now. It's hot, so the bud swells fast, and the leaf is pushed wider and wider until the bud shoots out a fresh leaf cluster, the start of a new branch, and the rip, the place where the side-to-side deer mouth grinding had sheared off the old one, masticating wood till all green chew and splinter, becomes suddenly an abandoned off-ramp, as if a highway system had been rejiggered, and there was now that way nothing. A derelict gas station, pumps long dry, Quick Mart boarded up, not even teenagers going out there to drink or fuck, not even cats sneaking under boards to investigate the all-day darkness. I mean, nothing. That forlorn, that forgotten. And as months pass and the new growth travels away, the splintered end will become dry, darker brown, smaller, and finally knob over, so that looking at the new growing branch a year from now, you wouldn't know it had emerged first. Wouldn't imagine a soft deer mouth inflicting its moot damage. What had seemed in the violent shock of a late July dawn, the very worst kind of heartbreak. A dozen branches lying half stripped around the trunk, and the new apples, every last one, gone. And I'll just read one more poem. This poem has a little specialist knowledge. Many of y'all probably know this, but apple trees are grafted. So there's a rootstock and then whatever kind of apple you want, and basically you knock them together and they grow and then it becomes one tree. So every apple tree, if you look at the base of it, has a graft on place where the roots and the top of the tree were affixed. So this poem is called Apple Tree's Dream. Apple trees dream in dormancy. Prove me wrong. Not visually, no, but of the feel of apples weighing down a branch, of rain against its canopy, of ground loosening to mud around its feeder roots, of petals opening. What is the feel of petals opening? More delicate than an eyelid rising over the surface of the eye. Of steps thudding around its trunk, a lawnmower growling too near, of leaves releasing like a body relaxing, keys, wallet, credit cards sliding from the palm. Or the reverse, fallen leaves returning, the pucker end snapping back on the branch, the dried ground uncrinkling like a pins and needles limb massaged back into feeling. And the occasional nightmare of the graft knot, what binds scion to rootstock, loosening, like a sweat-slick hand suspending it over a cliff, slipping. Or not as a nightmare, the scion, the whole upper part of the tree, rising like a hot air balloon, and the other trees rising too, the cloud-bound flock still orchard gridded. If anything could have ancestral memory, wouldn't it be a grafted thing? Every Granny Smith, a clone, some millions of times removed, of the first flute of Granny Smith. Every Mac, a cutting of a cutting of a cutting back to Mac's trial and error happy landing. So maybe, now and then, a dream of unaccustomed weight dangling from its fingertips, and the astonished realization of holding something sweeter than it had ever held before, a thing entirely new.
Right.
My apologies, I am also introducing the next reader, and that is David Leff. David Leff is the author of 7 nonfiction books, 3 volumes of poetry, and 2 novels in verse. He is Poet Laureate of Canton, Connecticut, and former Deputy Commissioner of the Connecticut Department of Environmental Protection. By appointment of the National Park Service, he served as poet in residence of the New England Trail in 2016 and 2017. David Leff.
Thank you very much, Ben. Gee, I should have brought some of my apple poems. My wife and I, on vacation last fall, sat on Robert Frost's porch in Ripton and ate some of his gnarly apples. I don't think it did me any good. I tried. This first number is called Bird Song, and it comes with an epigraph. Nearly 1/3 of the wild birds in the United States and Canada have vanished since 1970. That was in the New York Times on September 19th, 2019. Bird Song. I awaken to ghost birds, my ears ringing with dawn choruses past. Robins, finches, warblers, thrushes, and wrens erupting in melodies so loud and full I could not think. My mind carried on a freshet of sound. This morning is no silent spring, but a season muffled, slowly choked of breath, a boisterous choir fading to an ensemble of sweet chirps and whistles, not the wall of sound I heard as a boy. Connecting earth, air, and water, wings and hollow bones morphed to totems, portents. Is there freedom or courage without eagles? Mystery, absent owls peering into darkness. peace and healing minus the grace of cranes. I need no homing pigeons when hushed birdsong augurs anxiety and awe, messages me on the planet's health. Must every feathered thing be a canary, every backyard, street corner, and hilltop a coal mine? This is called River Mussels, and it also starts with an epigraph. I must have an inordinate fondness for epigraphs, because the next poem does too. Anyway, the epigraph is, the name of a thing may easily be more than the thing itself to me. That was Henry Thoreau. And River Mussels. Heel splitter, tidewater mucket, shiny rayed pocketbook, oval pigtail, warty back. Blind, sedentary, and soundless, names of these living rocks are the music of human imagination, spell primal wonder in wild creatures. Pearl shell, dwarf wedge mussel, alewife floater, eastern elliptico, sheep nose, pistol grip, glossy amber to greenish brown. These ovoid cobbles with concentric calcium rings hide beneath currents. Filtered detritus and bacteria stabilize stream beds, feed muskrats, herons, otters. Triangle floater, fat three-ridge, purple bank pine, monkey face, elephant ear. Secret sentinels of clean water, we smother them with poison sediments, drown them with dams, confident that what we don't see can't help us. This is called Skim Milk Sky. There is one word in here you might not be familiar with. It's a Pulaski, which is a firefighting tool. Back when I was a wildland firefighter, I used this tool. It has a hoe on one side and an axe on the other. And again, it starts with an epigraph. Historic wildfires rage in western states. The New York Times, 9, 10, 20. Skim milk sky. Beneath hazy skies tinged skim milk blue, I feel a pressure, a weight where New England's endless azure September should lighten my steps. Weirdly visible, air is soot smudged from blazes devouring California's homes and hillsides, the sun's eye clouded by a smoky cataract. The slight acrid scent brings me back to days cutting line with a Pulaski, spritzing hot spots from a backpack tank, old stumps burning like braziers, snags falling and splintering, foliage crackling like foil, and long hours of sweat, heat, and adrenaline-rushed heartbeats. Having witnessed the savage hunger of flames, I envision charred wreckage and broken lives in these soft flannel skies, the sooty air filled with heaven's portion of forests reduced to ragged shadows. Time's gradual click plays tricks on the human mind, and slow-paced climate change seems a future exceeding our grasp. I live in a digital age that scoffs at ancients who augured with meteor and eclipse, but by merely looking upward into a cloudless monotony of gray, I know that we connect to California with every breath. This one has a little salty language in it. I apologize, but you'll see it is authentic to the character. It's called Last of the Real Norwalk Lobstermen, in memory of my friend Henry Backer, whose son Terry was also a good friend of mine. He was a state legislator, one of the good guys. And also the first Long Island Sound keeper. Last of the Real Norwalk Lobster. Henry grabs the buoy with a boat hook, wraps the line on a winch, and hauls a 7-pot trawl, bits of seaweed and mud flying off the rope. Large gloved hands snatch wire cages as they surface with a dripping splutter. Muscular with a creased leathery face, spindly chicken legs and short pants, and bulging biceps, he's Popeye escaped from cartoons and comic strips, shaped by 75 years of sun, wind, salt, and tides. caught in the wire parlor. Several glossy, dark olive lobsters scuttled about like giant Jurassic insects. Shorts and eggers, a spider crab, and a starfish go overboard with a plop. The keeper's tossed into a tank of circulating seawater. Looking out at clusters of colorful plastic buoys like a field of floating flowers, he points a finger. "Greedy sons of bitches," he says in a voice rising from a low growl to godly bellow. "Some of those bastards with a couple thousand pots aren't making a living, they're doing a killing, raping the resource." In a tattered orange apron, Henry boasts about his new Harley, cuts thick chunks of stinking, oily mackerel, stuffing them into each empty trap. A lobster's gourmet fantasy. Years ago, he was bar to bar, raising hell, igniting fights. Now, everyone scrambles when they see this old fuck coming, he says. No telling what the SOB will do. Henry puts the baited pots on the rail, slowly piloting the boat forward, each one falling with a rhythmic splash, quickly disappearing beneath sun-sparkled green waters. "There are no laws," he explains, "just restrictions on people's lives." But he keeps close to the pulse, tying up his 36-footer each night beside the police boat, hosing mud, fish oil, and debris off the deck. He guides the boat around a maze of red, blue, and purple buoys. "It's a pirate business," he says. "Pricks soaking pots just to hold ground when fishing sucks, sabotaging boats, cutting lines." Henry fished until lobsters faded in warming Long Island Sound waters. A force of nature, he held on until nature gave out. "Never pray for me," he'd laugh. "No one gets out of here alive." My last piece is a little more hopeful. It's called Glass House, and it's about an experience I had some years ago entering the greenhouses of Smith College on an icy, cold January day. Glass House. Hunkered down, deep, every breath a strangled effort in January's icy squeeze. I duck into the greenhouse for a quick dip into summer. Smothered in womb-like soft humidity, muscles slacken and my defrosted mind wanders a jungled riot of vegetable life, thick soil scents and respiring plants. I could live forever in this indoor tropical paradise of rubber plants, cacao trees, lacy ferns, and tendril-grasping vines from the endless Augusts of Africa, Indonesia, and South America. Seduced by perpetual green, I've fallen for the alluring lips of glossy, crayon-colored orchids. Thin light penetrating this crystal tent pours from sky the color of faded jeans. Flimsy glazing and furnaces gobbling fossil fuel keep this artificial world refulgent and sodded with photosynthesis when periodic Arctics press on the panes of a fragile fallacy. I know about people living in glass houses, an evaporating ozone layer, countless cars idling at stoplights, and my doctor's melanoma warnings. A lingering adolescence looks for a rock. Break glass in emergency, school alarms once instructed. Then I remember the cobwebby blue orb captured in Apollo 8's Earthrise, and imagine the greenhouse floating in space. It's now my pleasure to introduce Frederick-Douglass Knowles. He's an educator and activist, fervent in achieving community augmentation through literary arts. He is the author of Black Rose City, a book that I have and love, and professor of English at Three Rivers Community College. He is the poet laureate of the city of Hartford. Frederick-Douglass.
Greetings, everyone. Okay, that's good. So I'm going to read some poems from a recently finished collection titled Sinking in Moonlight Alone. That's searching for a publisher. First one is conversion. And I want to say about Ben and apple trees. I didn't know. So I grew up in Knowles, Connecticut, and across from the college where I teach at Three Rivers. And my grandmother's house was a duplex, and in the yard we had 2 pear trees, an apple tree, a cherry stone tree, a rose garden, a vegetable garden, a flower garden, and a grapevine. And so when you were talking about the apple tree and fusing, I remember the way at the root, the way it kind of like intertwined and so forth. So thank you for that. So this is a poem. First one's called the title Conversion. The day that Hurricane Laureate cracked a very huge tree onto our rooftop, as we witnessed from the front window. 1985, for you younger ones. When Gloria started, the weatherman said she wouldn't be much. Some silver tears falling in rapid succession. Cumulus clouds arguing over open space. But when the wind began her sermon, the trees bowed in deference. The congregation of our front yard knelt in prayer, their branches swaying like a vigil of candlelight in hope that she wouldn't uproot their trunks from hollow ground, cast them into a forest of fallen limbs, their leaves silenced each season. We watched as a parishioner of oaks and pines pled for deliverance. One oak caught the Holy Ghost, flailed its arms like my sister whenever the Spirit swept her bifocals under mahogany cubes during the pinnacle of testimony service. The oak could no longer withstand the gale of Gloria, conceding with a disheartening hallelujah before crashing into our rooftop. When the might of the Lord laid its hands on our home, I gathered amongst my older siblings and discerned that my faith in the Almighty didn't stem from Tuesday night Bible study or Pastor Luther's Sunday communion of free crackers and juice, filling my body with the body of Christ. It was a Monday morning that made me believe. After the Holy Trinity of cloud, wind, and rain had moved out to sea, we peered through our window and bore witness to the falling oak, dismembered. The cacophony of brum brum, buzz, and crackle sang like a choir praising the name of God. Okay, not that one. This next one is the title piece, Sinking in Moonlight Alone. When I would go out to lunch with my mother, and we would sit there. She loves Chili's, and Pepsi, no ice. And she'd sit there, and every once in a while she'd look at me and smile, like, "You remind me of your father." And my father passed when I was 6 months old. He had a heart attack. He was married to my mom, had 9 children. My mom was a 50s mom, stayed at home and took care of 9 kids. And one day he went to work and didn't come back. And so this one is titled Sinking in Moonlight Alone, metaphorically structured with discourse from archaeology. She searches the day my father died, digs in the ancient as if an archaeologist, uncovers a quiet eternal in her cola, no ice. A virgin moon sips her soft dawn, swirls her straw into a first kiss that fizzles into footprints fossilized on a dance floor from 1955. My father's two-step is as measured as an officer's condolence, slow twisting our screen door. She swivels her straw, exhumes his lithic heart, camel walking walking into the desert 6 months before my first step. Our waiter inscribes with a paternal hand. My attributes remind her of Harvey. His attributes remind her of mine. My attributes remind her of Harvey. A soul as cool as an errant ocean sinking in moonlight alone. Well, I must be honest, the second page of that poem is missing, so it shall end there. I'm like, alone. Blank, alone. Blank, alone. Okay, all right. So, to be continued. You have to buy the book, the upcoming book, for the end of that poem. You can clap that, yes. So we'll think about this one. Now that I have a little bit more time. So one of the things I heard one of the presenters talk about is perseverance, right, for the earth, for Mother Nature. And I believe that starts with perseverance and waking up as humans and humanity. So we have to persevere to wake up for and to each other before we can start to actually persevere and wake up to save the earth, which is this abstract concept for some illogical reason, right? It's out there when it's not, it's right here, but so are we, right? And so this poem is, so I grew up in Norwich, Connecticut, and I went to NFA, Norwich Free Academy. And historically, in the late 70s, and mid 70s to early 80s, we have a Norwich Town Green, if you've ever been to Norwich. And a lot of events are held on that green, Rose Arts Festival back in the day, so on and so forth. But what a lot of people don't know is that during the mid 70s and 80s, it was the platform and scene for race rides at NFA. And one of these race rides started when a jock spit on my sister and called her a nigger. But what he failed to realize is that I come from a family of 11. I have 6 brothers and 4 sisters. And so one day my 2 older brothers, they persuaded and convinced my mom to give them a ride to school, which should have been a red flag because they never really went to school. And she did. And so this is what happened. It's titled Another Ride on the NFA Green. I wonder what mommy thought when you, it's dedicated to my brother Michael. I wonder what mommy thought when you and Harvey intently missed the bus, devised a ride to school, her older son appealing to the nature of motherhood while you slipped from the back seat, jimmied the trunk, and eased that crowbar into your book bag. I wonder what that jock thought when you crashed that crowbar into his ribcage, cracking his bone, cracking true bone like twig. A wince of an apology noosed in autumn air. His superiority heaving on top sun-kissed blades cut the day before. Appetent grass mistook his tears for morning dew. I wonder if he contemplated first period the day before. The animus he spat into our sister's hair, anchored by the nigger cast across hall outside of homeroom. The revere he received, the gloat, the N on his varsity jacket, applauded for meaning much more than Norwich. I wonder when he awoke, spewing the red and white colors of our mascot, scurrying from a mosh of black fists, if he knew the victories soaked into the soil, the cracked bones before his, infuriated that our ancestry destined her children to remain free. I wonder, during band practice, if the millennials knowingly march atop the victories, the ties and losses of their kin. If the symbolists clash alloy on the same patch you crashed that crowbar, were you assured no one would ever again soil our sisters' education at the academy? All right, two more. So this one, I've become the unofficial, official funeral poet of my city. So when folks pass away, some folks, I've been asked several times to read poems, and it's kind of to the point where I got to keep like a poem on my mind or maybe in my pocket. And so the last one, it just had me thinking. We had several funerals recently. And so I was just like, kind of thinking about my own demise, right? And I was just like, well, okay, well, you know, if I die, bury me in Black Rose City. And so this just spewed out. Yeah, so it's titled Bury Me in Black Rose City, an elegy for Norwich, Connecticut. When I die, bury me in Black Rose City, where Mahan Elementary taught me how to daydream, sitting at my desk, behind the piano. Mrs. Galuli's 5th grade class, fiending for McDonald's from across the street, Chicken McNugget Suite, where Salem Turnpike turned into Greatskate, zooming in and out of electric poles, where every colored complexion caught disco-like fever to roll, where stories were told, too many to capture in my eulogy. Bury me in Black Rose City, where Teachers Memorial Junior High field tripped me to Boston and New York City. Strawberry schnapps spilled in the back of the bus, streaming down the aisle, young, 8th grade and wild, with Artie, Kevin, Katie, Tara, Yolanda, and Hot Chin, where our infinite bond began, and I found a handful of lifelong friends. 2. Bury me in Black Rose City, on the hill between Jane Arms and Oakwood Knoll, behind Bonanzas and Zares, and let me stare into the Valley of Thames, where the squirrels would engrave our names into the coats of their acorns. Bury me in Black Rose City, on the west side, on the apex of Summit Street, back when Aunt Nancy's neighborhood was a cultural crock pot, Jews, blacks, and browns, stirring the stew before the recipe of eminent domain into Dan Jenkins Park. Bury me at the block party in 83. The bridge is over, blaring into the fields where brothers forged like steels whoever New London knuckleheads tried to jump back, but headed back down Route 32, mumbling through fat lips about what they should and shouldn't do. 3. Bury me in Black Rose City, next to NFA, Mohegan Park, Hamilton Football Field, East Side, Laurel Hill, Lake Street, the Red Rabbit, Sportsman's, Portuguese Club, Johnson Sandpit, Bowling Alley Birthdays, Greenville, Tapville Carnival, Norwich Tech, Young Folks Shop, Gordon's, Palace Theater, Norwich Cinema 1 and 2, Barker's, King's, Ames, Marcus Plaza, Benny's, Two Legs, Norwich Town Mall Arcade, Caldors, Buellland Church, the King Center, Spalding Pond, Mohegan Park Zoo, St. Peter and Paul Fair, Uncas, Buckingham Veterans School, the Sheraton, the golf course, Malura's Farm, Melrose Park, the dirt bike trails, Forwards Pond, East Great Plains Firehouse, Delia's, Bacatora's Bakery, Seafood, etc., the first Kentucky Fried Chicken, the PLAV, VFW, American Legion, Ping, 783, Woolworths, G-Fox, the YMCA, Otis Library, King Wa, Oak Tree, Olympic Pizza, Nickel Night at the Village Green, Mohegan Park Apartments, the Manicor, ANP, BB's, Both Friendlies, Fairlawns, Elizabeth Wood Street School, the Rec, Masonic Temple, Principal's Mansion, freshman football, Coach Spain, Coach Mignault, Mr. Iovino, Mr. Greenwich, Miss Handel, Mr. Fields, Mr. Blackstone, Mr. Snitkin, Mr. Sorello, Mr. Tarka, Mr. Kachewa, Mr. and Mrs. Osco. My mother, Mrs. Knowles, who took no shit from no student. Miss Fitzgerald, Mrs. Turner, Mrs. Hogan, the city dump, Warwick's Hill, Norwich Motel, Charlie's Supermarket, Scooby's, Radio Shack, Tom McCann's, Genevieve's, Uncle's on Thames, the State Hospital, Bacchus, Crocodiles, Indian Leap, McDonald's, Friday Night Burger King, parking lot fights, The Falls, Montville Road, Pizza Hut, TVCCA, Seaside, 575, before Walmart was a vacant lot. 4. Bury me in Black Rose City, in Maplewood Cemetery, next to Gammon, and Eve Montgomery, and Miss Macy too. And maybe my roots will seep through the soil for my sage to see how my grandbaby is an extension of legacy, a branch of the forward tree. Teach her like the Forest Knowles taught me, how to strap on your armor and leave the battlefield bloody. Let me gaze at a Mohegan sun eclipse. Tell the city I did it for them. And I do it again when God gives me the strategy to play the game again. I did it for my family, yours and mine. And when it's my time, tell them what I told them. And tell them again that the petals of my city wilt and renew like a season. Leave them with a reason to garnish the rose that grew through concrete. Tupacian philosophy. We've shed so many tears in this thug life. Dear Mama, thank you for making me and raising me so one day they bury me in Black Rose City.
The last one I'll read,
It's brand new, finished today for tomorrow. I'm doing a reading at Otis Library for the Harris Sisters Heritage Month, where Sarah Harris and Mary Harris attended Prudence Crandall School, and Sarah and Mary were from Norwich, from Black Rose City. And so I figure I'd read it, hopefully you guys can let me know if it sucks. Or constructive criticism, my opinion. And so this poem is titled The Ashes Were Part of the Plan, because the history of the school was that once Prudence Crandall allowed African descent women, young girls to attend, well, the folks at Canterbury didn't like it too much and tried to burn it down, set it ablaze. And yeah. And there's a reference to Sankofa, and Sankofa is from the Ghanaian culture, African culture of Ghana, the Twi language, and it means to retrieve or to look back. And so there's a movie entitled Sankofa, where African descent people, diaspora children, are encouraged to look back and not forget their heritage and where they came from. And the symbol, which I recently got, is a heron that bends her neck backwards and drops an egg onto her back to never forget where you come from and honor and protect your lineage. So this poem is titled The Ashes Were Part of the Plan, for Sarah Harris, Mary Harris, and Prudence Crandall. Not even a classroom ignited into ember could make me quit. Ambition burning like the gallant walls of Prudence Crandall. My soul sang a prelude to the blues, etched between the integrated lines of a notebook announcing my name as the first African descent pupil to approach Prudence with a spirit letter from the principal of Psalms. Teach me like you teach them. A spirit letter from my sister. Teach her like you teach them. A spirit letter from diasporic women across the country. Teach us like you teach them. Connecticut black laws, barring colored out-of-state students, couldn't unloop the cursive written by the hand of the Lord himself. Not even the stout of flame, scathing the Canterbury landscape, could char such sacred parchment. Our flame inked a simple sentence. Study the lexicon of love. Steer the coals of your internal incandescence like smoldering spikes, assembling a railroad, traveling underground, beneath Rose City, where thorns safeguard flowers blossoming on top of the ruins of racism. The ashes were part of the plan. Daughters of Sankofa, reach back to retrieve your heritage. Reach back like the neck of a heron, folding back to place the egg of ancestry on its back, looking back to douse the souls of white folk, frightened that our purpose would spread like the wings of a heron, flaming like the feathers of a phoenix, rising like the renovated walls of Prudence Crandall School for colored girls who considered liberation when freedom wasn't enough. Can I borrow somebody's Bible? Daniel Donaghy is the author of 5 poetry collections, including Somerset, co-winner of the Patterson Poetry Prize. Start with the Trouble, winner of the University of Arkansas Press Poetry Prize, and Street Fighting, a Patterson Prize finalist. He has twice been a finalist for the Connecticut Book Award. His critical essay, Keep Coming On, Sterling Brown's Enduring Challenges to African American Audiences, appears in the autumn 2021 issue of Spectrum, a journal on black men. Please welcome Daniel Donaghy.
Margaret, should you carry this like place to place? I feel like I should. Thank you all. We just live in a wonderful state. I tell you, it's such an honor to listen to all of you today and to look out in the audience and see so many other wonderful poets. And I really feel Rennie here today as well. And wish you were here with us reading. And I hope we see him very, very soon. And for everything that he's done for our state. And Margaret, I'll say more about you later. You've done so much for our state and just for this event today. Touch a little later on something Margaret says about the character speaker in an ancient poem, bringing some John Keats there. And I want to begin with a poem by my first poetry teacher, Harry Hughes, a wonderful nature poet. And Ben, I didn't plan this. It's about apples. It's amazing how serendipitous things. But I know we've been talking a while, so I'll get right to it. This is a poem called From the Apple Tree by Harry Hughes. 4 deer, one with antlers rubbed smooth against saplings, eat apples, jaws circling and grinding, their ears moving constantly, listening for twig snap, brush of sleeve against bark. I could watch them the rest of my life, teaching my children how to live in such light as this, how to move just still through the world, how to sit still to let nothing get by, musk glands inside the hind legs, the swollen curve of the buck's neck, his antlers dipping as he sniffs the dough, branches cool and rough against my fingers. Over the pond, the dark presses in, and one deer suddenly balances on hind legs, front feet tucked under its chest, head stretched towards some rosehip berries, and above it, an early star, I don't know. And this need to have the deer vanish on their own, not scared away by me, everything intact, unchanged, as if I'd not been there at all. Here's my friend. Can somebody do a weird thing? Hey Fred, could you take a picture of this? Sure. My friend Harry, I love Harry. He's very much a father figure to me, but he's about 10 years into dementia. I don't know if it's dementia or Alzheimer's. I don't know how that gets diagnosed. But he's still Harry. He's just very, very quiet, and he listens. Anyway, I just want to send him a picture. That's all right. Just pretend I'm still reading. There you go. Yeah. I'm sure that's sufficiently awkward. Here, I'll look serious.
Look serious.
Just my serious poacher face.
You can lip sync.
That'll make him smile. You know? Okay, so one thing that Harry taught me was really just to be, again, that poem, just completely, it's a complete and utter deference to the natural world. And he taught me how to fly fish. Badly, but you know, I'm okay. But there are birds that fly fish in a way. Birds that fish by themselves, you know, will pick up a piece of bread or a piece of food and drop it on the water and just wait. You know, like Harry did all those years, putting the fly out on the water. One of them is the green heron, not as big as the blue heron, and not as representative. Not represented enough in poems, so I tried to fix that. This is called Green Heron, and walks you through how this bird catches its food. A green heron fishes with bread from a bank muddied by last night's rain. Its S-shaped neck stretches over still water, its spear of a bill just off the surface as he drops the crust and waits for fry to rise on this June day of bog bean and sweet flag. 3 red-eared sliders basking on a log, a bullfrog croaking somewhere inside bee balm and cardinal flower. Poised, coiled, he looks at nothing but water, ringed by duckweed, angles his head against glare. What is on his mind, besides sunnies and minnows whose spines will snap when he shakes them, then swallows them whole? He lifts the bread, sets it elsewhere, a fly fish casting. Then the blur of a stab beneath the crust at the precise moment the fish strikes, then several gulps, 2 deep, slow breaths, its streaked breast puffing to double its normal size, green cap cresting before the long exhale, the settling of round gray wings and what's left of the bread, ripples spreading over the pond. Thank you for that. Just a little snapshot. It's just amazing what animals have to do to survive, but they do it. So this is what I knew about nature growing up in Philadelphia. Really, it's just, there was a lot down the street, you know. And Margaret, we talked about, well, I'm from the city. I really don't have any nature experiences. You've really cured me of that. You know, all of the things that are done to desecrate nature to build cities is a starting point for some poems that need to be written. This is called Between Better Days. On warm childhood afternoons, I'd stalk head-high weeds beside Tinny's bar for anything I could snatch with my hand. Crickets, grasshoppers, now and then a praying mantis chomping on a fly, and clink it into my jar, where they hop and spit what we call tobacco on sticks and grass I tossed in there. And they live as if they lived for long, cramped like that on a shelf in the cramped bedroom I shared with my parents after we lost the second house and set up an apartment my uncle owned, where I slept between the foot of their bed and the TV, radio, record player they bought in better days. The cot I'd fold each morning and push against the wall, my nose cold against the thin glass between me and those ready eyes and legs and frightened mouths. Still as I was, those moments before I took that jar with me on my walk to school, past warm women working Kensington Avenue, even that early, past huffers huddled outside the lumberyard's barbed wire gates, hoping for day work, beneath the clacking, sparking L, opening the jar as I passed that block, waiting for the bugs to vanish long before I'd figure out how to disappear myself. Philly childhood to Jersey Shore childhood. You're landlocked, but not really, because you can get Garden State Parkway can get you to the beach and everything. That's the beach. So I wanted my children to have that experience, so we try to get down there sometimes. This is called My Daughter in the Waves of Ocean City, New Jersey. From my spot under our beach umbrella, I watch my younger daughter tire of shovels and sand shapers and sprint toward the waves, safe between the lifeguards' green flags, skipping and squealing in the water she's known for a week each summer of her life. And something in how she flings the sea foam and shimmies under it takes me back to that fire club. We don't call them fire clubs, they're fire clubs. Fire club on Lehigh Avenue in Philadelphia. Some older kids cupped hands arcing a flow we danced under, boys shirtless in cut-off shorts, girls nodding soaked t-shirts at their sides, those shameless 90-degree days when someone's radio blasted from a stoop and cars sloshed through a free wash until a cop's huge wrench stopped the good time we knew couldn't last. Just about every face I bring back from those days, gone from my life so long they could be next to me on this beach, and I wouldn't recognize them, and I wouldn't know what to say to them if I did about that place of middle shadows and clacking L's, all the days trying to look hard, crazy enough not to be messed with, all that shouting, all those fights coming back at odd moments like this to remember they're still here, somewhere in my head and chest I can't explain, and they're on my hands, too, in scars and the aching joints of broken knuckles and fingers, hands covered now by my daughter's, when she pulls me back into Lake June's easy breeze and summer promises, into her rush of fear and hope while she screams at the back-to-back waves headed in to throw her down, calling me to join her, wide-eyed, smiling, as she takes off anyway, anyway. And there was two dogs. That was little Eliza. The daughter mentioned in this poem is Abigail, and shameless plug to my daughter Abigail. Abigail is an aspiring actress, and on Tuesday, if you stay up there, at 10 p.m. on CBS, she will be in an episode of FBI's Most Wanted. You gotta see it from the beginning, because this is a true story. They shot this thing like 3 weeks ago, completely edited, ready to go. They worked much harder than I did, and I'm unbelievable efficiency on these sets, I guess. Anyway, so you gotta tune in right away, because I won't tell you why, but she needs to burst from her house. She runs into the street, bam, gets hit by a car and goes flying, and then she gets interrogated by the police because something she saw was bad. But anyway, the person, her stunt double, had COVID, she had to do all the stunts. So my daughter's out there, we have this video of her. That's another thing. But anyway, it's nice to have that happen for her because with COVID, she was in her room going to college on Zoom, and I was in the basement teaching college on Zoom. It wasn't great, right? So this is the last poem I'll read. I thank you all for listening. The website, I'm going to make reference to a website here, that's explore.org. You can go on and log into animal cams from all over the world. And what they did with this one of my eagles is they set up a camera in an abandoned nest, hoping that one day, family, somebody would move in. For some reason it was abandoned. It got chased off, or the birds that were there died. Just waiting, birds will come. So they took a chance that a family would set up there, and they did. It's amazing. These amazing cameras, and this is what we saw. It's called Eagles, what is it? Eagles with Eaglets. on webcam. And being from Philly again, the only thing I knew about Eagles was that I know Eagles, they play football downtown. That's all. So much more. I'd seen the steel stairs of broken wing rescues on zoos, stripped branches and birch boughs, and cartoon versions of their spread wings and fearsome faces in silhouette on football helmets and sweatshirts and faded car trunk magnets. And I'd marveled at photos in which they glide stiff wings across blue-blurred western skies and swoop down talus slopes to snatch in their talons salmon and suckers with a grip 10 times stronger than a man's. But until my daughter sent me a link to a webcam, watching a mother and father nurse their just hatched babies in a windstorm, I'd never seen a bald eagle's fierceness displayed as love. In 5 minutes, I'll teach contemporary poetry. She'll log on to psychology of infants and toddlers. For the past year, her college has been her room, my classroom, the basement, my students' Zoom boxes of names, most without faces, their cameras turned off, mics muted until I opened the day's breakout rooms. No one cares anymore, my daughter says. Everyone's just numb, moving from group to virtual group. I watch them start each discussion awkwardly as if waking in fog, logged into school from their kitchens and beds, or while they work or walk or drive. Even my best students are blank-faced and at least a little sad. So for them, as much as for myself, I scrap plans to talk about nature poetry and show them where it comes from. 100 feet up, a stick straw nest, yards wide and deep, swaying in what another website tells me is 15 degrees with 40-mile-an-hour winds. The only sound I hear is the father flies off and the mother sits still except for her twitch-turned head. No sign yet during class of the babies beneath her, which I forget somehow to mention to my students before I share my screen and ask them to jot down what they see, details for each sense. And just as I join them, writing that everything around is brown but her crown and tail and beak, and note how huge the nest is, wonder how long it took the couple mated for life to weave it, or if they took over another couple's who died or moved. My daughter texts, "Oh my God." And there they are, both of them, shivering, egg white, downy gray. The mother showing the class and me how she rips into a gashed trout, how she tilts her head as if to kiss with her hooked beak, her nearly blind eaglets, their new eyes just open, necks too weak to rise. She bends with a sliver of fish toward the faster one, firstborn, most likely, who's ravenous, flailing so the handoff doesn't happen, the fish disappearing into the nest. She tears another piece, and this time it works. The eaglet takes the flesh and swallows, hungrier for the second bite, it seems, than the first. Then she feeds the shyer one, same deal. Fish falls, she gets more, it works, moving back and forth to the gutted fish until she decides they've had enough and stands over them. Kneads the straw before she lowers herself, rises, lowers, their world again, the dark beneath her. She'll do this for hours. I'll come back to watch later. The father will take his shifts too, stuffing straw beneath him to make up for his smaller size. He'll feed them another trout near midnight. The mother will zip her head into the anorak of her wings and shield them from 3 a.m. freezing rain. My daughter texts back, again, amazing. And I send a heart back. Yes, amazing, this instinct. This instinct. Hang on, take pause on that. To do nothing, but ready these eaglets for their own soaring, slashing lives. A blaze of pure purpose, new to me, but old as blood to her. That blaze, that blood, poisoned and shotgunned almost into darkness, but saved. One force in our one warming world, saved almost at its end. How close is almost? For us all and for these skies where the eagle can spot a rabbit 2 miles off, dive toward it at 100 miles an hour, 3 times faster than a horse could gallop across the muddy fields beneath her this early spring afternoon, on which for now she sits still, simply being what she is, what she'll continue to be after I've turned back to the day's demands, which we all know I won't remember at all. Sorry. It is my tremendous honor to introduce Marilyn Knowles, who needs no introduction, but we have one and we're going to read it. Marilyn Nelson is the author or translator of more than 20 books or chapbooks for adults and children of Marilyn's 9 poetry collection for adults, The Home Place, won the 1992 Anisfield Wolf Award, the Fields of Praise, and the selected poems, received the 1998 Poets Prize, the Penn Winship Award, and Lenore Marshall Prize. Her many honors include the Frost Medal, the Poetry Society of America's Award for Distinguished Lifetime Achievement in Poetry, and fellowships from the Guggenheim Foundation and the National Endowment for the Arts. Professor Emerita of English at the University of Connecticut, she currently serves as a Chancellor of the Academy of American Poets, and was, as we all know, Poet Laureate of Connecticut from 2001 to 2006. She has 2 new books this year, Augusta Savage, The Shape of a Sculptor's Life, and A is for Oboe, the orchestra's alphabet. Please join me in welcoming Marilyn Nelson.
Thank you. I told Margaret that was too long. And I still think that. I sat deciding what to read, but I can't quite remember why I picked these poems. So there was a reason. I think I have in mind reading 4 rather brief poems. The first 3 are from life of George Washington Carver, whose life is a kind of a model of the lives we all need to be living. He was not only an environmentalist and organic scientist, but also was a mystic who recognized that everything is connected. I don't think he would have been at all surprised at the however many miles of in a teaspoon of soil from the forest. So again, I'm just going to read 3 or 4. This is called The Perceiving Self. Carver was born into slavery and grew up learning how to be free. And as a young boy, something like 15 years old, he was wandering alone in Kansas, and he came across lynching. So that's the story here, and I was just starting to write this book, and every one of the poems had a voice to tell the story, but the story of this lynching I didn't have a voice for, because Carver was alone out in the fields. And I wanted to read this because the voice that came is the voice of a field of flowers. And I think it's voices like those that we need to learn to hear. So I'm reading this poem for that reason. The Perceiving Self, Fort Scott, Kansas, 1879. The first, except birds who spoke to us, his voice high and lilting as a meadowlark's, with an undertone of wind song, many petaled as the meadow, the music shaped and colored by brown lips, white teeth, pink tongue. Walking slowly, he talked to us, touched our stamens, pleasured us with pollen. Then he squealed, a field mouse taken without wing beat, with no shadow. His yellow feet crushed past, running, his bare legs bruised. He trampled, his spew burned, his scalding urine. The ice drift of silence, smoke from a torched dead man, barking laughter from the cottonwoods at the creek. Again, it seems to me that these are voices we need to learn to recognize. This is Carver for most of his life, from the time he was a teenager. He was alone most of his life. And he got up every morning before dawn and went out into the woods to what he called commune with the Creator. I think in our parlance now, since we've been influenced by Eastern philosophy, he was meditating. That's here, a young man at 4 a.m. in the woods meditating. Darkness softens, a thin tissue of mist between trees. One by one, the day's uncountable voices come out like twilight fireflies, like stars. The perceiving self sits with his back against rough bark, casting 10,000 questions into the future. As shadows take shape, the curtains part for the length of time it takes to gasp and behold the purpose of his life dawns on him. That was 3. This is another Carver poem. Carver was not only an instinctive scientist, but he was also a trained scientist. And in this poem, he's a grown-up scientist. He's he spent most of his adult life teaching at Tuskegee Institute in Alabama. And he lived in the men's dormitory. He had 2 rooms in the men's dorm. One room he lived in, and the other room was full of his collections of scientific samples, rocks, plants, mushrooms, and so on. So in this poem, he's sitting behind the men's dorm. He's reading an article in a science newspaper about an astronomer named Harlow Shapley, who in this year, 1918, had figured out the dimensions of the Milky Way. And again, I'm reading this because for Carver, all of these things are connected. The Milky Way is not separate from us. It's a part of us. It's a part of our universe. So, okay, this is called the dimensions of the Milky Way. Behind the men's dorm at dusk on a late May evening, Carver lowers the paper and watches the light change. He tries to see Earth across a distance of 25,000 light years from the center of the Milky Way. A grain of pollen, a spore of galactic dust. He looks around. That shagbark, those swallows, the fireflies, that blasted mosquito, this beautiful world. 100 billion stars in a roughly spherical, flattened disk with a radius of 100 light years. Imagine that. He catches a falling star. Well, Lord, this infinitesimal speck could fill the universe with praise. From a poem that is not about Carver, and it's been the people from I can't remember. Never mind. It's been animated and it's available online as an animation with a voiceover by Cy Montgomery, who, if you haven't discovered, you need to find. She is a woman who goes off on scientific expeditions and then comes back and writes books for children and young adults about the expedition. I heard her give a talk once in which she said, oh, well, I was on this expedition. We were in southern Africa. And I went out early one morning to the river to bathe, and luckily there was a spitting cobra right in front of me. Luckily I wear glasses, and a spitting cobra can't kill you unless its venom gets in your eyes. So I knew I was okay, so I just, she's wonderful, S-Y, Montgomery. Okay. So this is just a description, an article I read online about something that's happening in octopus world. What if the submarine is praying for a way it can poison the air, in which some of them have leaped for a few seconds, felt its suffocating, rejected buoyancy. Something floats above their known world, leading a wake of uncountable death. What if they organized into a rebellion? Now, scientists have found a group of octopuses who seem to have a sense of community, who live in dwellings made of gathered pebbles and shells, who cooperate, who defend an apparent border. Perhaps they'll have a plan for the planet